What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Cooking for Morons. Today we're going to go over an easy chicken curry rice recipe. Okay, so this is a pretty simple curry recipe, and this is essentially all we're going to need. You can see we've got our chicken, we've got a red pepper, eggplant, some curry, there you go, curry paste, using red curry paste because I like that stuff. Going to need, you can use any kind of milk, really. I'm using coconut milk because it's a better flavor. You can also just use cream or milk. Doesn't really matter. If you use cream, mix it with water. That's important. Like 3 or 4 parts water to 1 part cream. We've got our rice. Got this tomato, cumin, garlic. If you have fresh garlic, you can dice that up too. You can also use an onion. I don't have one, and it'll be fine. And we're going to be using some ketchup or tomato sauce, depending on what part of the world you're in. We're going to start by cutting up red pepper. We've gone over this in a previous video, so I'm not going to focus too much on it. We're just going to kind of skip ahead to the end, and I'll show you about the size you're going to want the pieces to be. Okay, so we've cut up the red pepper. We've got medium-sized pieces like that. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I like them to be a little bit chunkier for this, but you can go smaller. I wouldn't go any bigger, though. You don't want to just be eating mouthfuls of spicy red peppers, unless that's your thing. Alright, next up, we are going to do the tomato. Make sure you've got it rinsed and ready to go. So, as I mentioned before, cutting a tomato, you're going to want to use a sharp, flat blade. You're going to want to saw into it. You don't need that much pressure. Just sort of saw through it. This is a much better one than the last one I used on the channel, so we're going to actually go through the whole process. It won't be anywhere near as mushy as that old-ass tomato I used when making chili. Okay, so we've got this nice cleanly sliced tomato. We're going to go ahead and dice it. You can do this in parts. I'm going to start with this thicker piece and just do it on its own. Your pieces probably want to be about that big. It'll get pretty mushy in the pan, so it's not like it really matters. Yeah, here we'll stack a few of them up and give it the same treatment. Don't be afraid to... There. You get the idea. Alright, so for the next step, we're going to go ahead and oil the pan. I'm going to be using this camelina oil that I got on sale. It's got a really high smoke point, so... just kind of a good oil. Don't need that much, but you want to make sure your pan is relatively well coated. And just to be clear, we're on about half heat. So like medium high maybe. So yeah, just go ahead and put your tomato and red pepper right in the pan in the oil and get it all tossed around and stirred. This is going to cook and soften while we do the rest of the choppy. Now, next up, we're going to do the eggplant. Oh, worth noting, I've also got my rice on. We went over how to do rice in a previous video, so I'm not going to harp on it. You can put the rice on now. I like to have mine done before I finish the actual curry, so that I can just have it ready to add at the end. Also, if you don't have rice, you can use any kind of grain. You could use pasta if you want to. A lot of people use bread. They just eat their curry with bread. Like hard breads, flat breads, that kind of thing are also really good. You might even be able to make like nachos work, but I've never tried it. So yeah, don't feel bad if you don't have rice, but I do recommend it as a good starting point. So, for the eggplant, this one's already starting to ripen internally because I've already used part of it. But that's actually just fine. As long as the eggplant isn't too soft, then you won't have an issue. Some people take the skin off the eggplant. I don't worry about it. Instead, I'm going to cut it into thin slices. Now, eggplant can have a tough exterior, so don't be afraid to saw. Actually, I have a better knife for this. Of course, you can just use the same knife you were using before, but I have a serrated knife, so we're going to do that. Ah, much better. So yeah, something about that thickness, maybe even thinner. It doesn't have to be... You don't want it to be too thick, really. Yeah, maybe something more like that. That floppy boy. So this is how much I think we're going to use. a total of about, I don't know, that much. Now we'll take that flat blade again because it's better for the chopping. Gonna cut it just clean in half, and then again on each side. So essentially cutting it into fours. And proceed to chop. It should chop pretty easy. Eggplant's a soft food, and it only gets softer once you start cooking it. If you've never used eggplant before, don't be too worried about it. It's a food I never ate growing up because it's not really a big part of, Canadian cuisine. But I've really come to enjoy it. I like its texture and how it takes on the flavor of other things that you're cooking. So this is cooking nicely, you'll see. All oiled up and starting to dry out a little bit, which is fine. Still kind of hard, but we're going to be cooking it for a while longer yet. Just wanted to make room, because we're adding the eggplant. Okay, so the eggplant is all in there. Gonna toss it all together. We're gonna get ready to spice this fucker before we cut the meat up. First step of that is going to be to add some water. Now, as usual, this has a little bit of guesswork to this. So we're going to add like that much. And sort of toss it around. That does seem pretty good for now, though we're likely not to need any more of that because we're going to be using coconut milk. But that'll be added momentarily. So now we're going to add those spices, starting with the garlic. Again, I like a lot of garlic. You don't necessarily need to put as much as I do. Gives things a lot of flavor. If you chopped up your garlic using fresh garlic, then maybe a clove or two would be fine. And you could have put that in earlier as well, but when you're using powder, it doesn't need time to cook, really. And then cumin. You don't need a whole lot of cumin, as I've mentioned before. There. That will have a very nice, spiced taste. Delicious. So that's going to need some time to just soften and cook. And now we're going to do our chicken. So we've got our chicken here. Got a little one and a big one. That's all I've got left, so I'm just going to go ahead and use them both. And as we've done before, I'm going to go ahead and cut the chicken into strips, as chicken breasts. You don't have to use chicken breast. You can use any kind of chicken, but breast is just the most, convenient thing. And, of course, we're using boneless. If you're using boned chicken, you're going to want to boil that first, or even just fry it wholesale, cool it off, and then strip it from the bone before you add it to the recipe. So I do recommend using, boneless chicken if you're going to be doing this. Never tried this with, breaded chicken, but you probably could do it. I just have no idea how that would be flavor-wise. But it wouldn't hurt you. Okay, so we've got all the pieces cut up into strips. We're just going to take them a couple at a time, line them up, and not really cube them, but kind of cube them. Dice them. So now we got the chicken cut up. We're going to go ahead and put it right in the pan. Alright, so the chicken's in the pan. We have tossed it all together rather nicely. The next step will be to add the curry paste, which is going to require just a touch of water. I know I said earlier we wouldn't be using more water, but apparently I lied. It won't need much, but enough for the paste to dissolve in. So, curry paste. You can get it in a lot of different forms. This has a bag inside the container. I'm going to open up the bag and I'm going to put... you want to put between 3 and 5 teaspoons, usually in a full meal for 2 or 3 people like this. If you're not used to spicy food, or you're unsure if you can handle it, try maybe 2 to 4. I wouldn't recommend going above 6, because then you're starting to just taste nothing but the paste. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so we got this heaping half a teaspoon here. I'm just going to call that a teaspoon. Take some of the guesswork out. That way I don't have to worry about it. So yeah, just should come off real clean. Now do like 2 or 3 more of those. I'm going to be putting 4 in total. Okay, so you'll see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 tablespoons. Next step, and while we added the water, I'm going to just like mash the curry paste down into the water to start with. Where's that last one? Right here. And stir it up until the paste sort of dissolves into the oils and the water. Okay, so here we see that it's pretty effectively mixed. You could just let the water boil out, but I wouldn't want to risk anything burning to the bottom of the pan. So we're going to go ahead and add the coconut milk right now. But first, we're going to turn this up a little bit, because we're going to need to boil down the milk. Okay, so we've got our coconut oil here. Or coconut milk, rather. I know words. So you can use the whole thing in here if you want to. And coconut milk won't keep once you open it for more than a day in the fridge. So you may as well. The only thing is, the more you use of the coconut milk, the creamier your sauce is going to be, but the longer it will take to boil down. So it's a matter of figuring out how much you're comfortable wasting doing this. And it turns out that's about as much for me. I'm not going to throw it out yet. We're going to stir this up and see how, if we're going to need any more. Okay, so the amount that I put in is fine. Maybe even a little more, but it's not a big deal. It's just going to take some extra time to boil down. I would do this with the top off, come back and stir it every couple of minutes, but you can just kind of go off on your own in the meantime. Also, my rice is finished, but it's just kind of hanging out there waiting to be used, which is fine. It will be fine on the stovetop. Just make sure you take it off the heat. Once your 20 minutes is up, turn the heat off, remove it from the heat, and just leave it covered. Okay, so we boiled this down for probably 8 minutes. I've been here to stir it two and a half times, I guess. Like, I came twice, but one of the times I stirred it up a second time before I left, because I went to see if Molly wanted to go out, the door being right there. You know. So this is about finished, honestly. I broke up the bits of chicken, like the bigger bits of chicken, as I was stirring it, just to make sure everything got cooked. That's just me being a little bit anal, I suppose. Now, normally, and for those of you familiar with making curry, you put some flour in to make it more of a gravy. I don't like doing that. You can just add like a dash of flour and stir it all up. I'm not going to. Also, most curry recipes you'll find online call for both a little bit of sugar and tomato paste. That's where the ketchup comes in, because it is sweet and tomato pasty. So now that we're essentially done, we're going to just like a ring of ketchup, just like that. Also, here's a dog. She's probably not supposed to be eating whatever that is, but I think it's too late now. Okay, so just stir it all up the way you have repeatedly so far. By the way, I've turned the heat down to 3, rather, because we're no longer trying to, like, boil it down. It's about as down as it's going to need to get. You'll notice that it has the consistency of more of a sauce, or like a chili. Honestly, I'm not convinced that chili isn't just Mexican curry, but that's not for me to decide. So now we'll take our rice, and we're going to put this rice just right on in. We're going to stir it in, but that's going to take 2 hands, so I'll see you on the other side of that. And there you have it. We have our curry rice. It's a big old steaming pile. There's still plenty left in the pan for another meal. If you're not a big fat piece of shit like me, you might even get 3 or 4 meals out of something like that. We used a whole cup of rice for this one to give you an idea of the ratio. But of course, this isn't an exact science, and you can switch things up as much as you need to. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and let me know in the comments or on my Discord, which you can find linked in the description, if you bothered to try this or any of my other recipes and how it turned out. Make sure you like the video, And subscribe to the channel if you haven't, so you won't miss any more of my fantastic content. Additionally, you should probably check out my live streams. Most of what my channel is honestly just gaming live streams, but I think they're quite fun. We have a lovely community, and you should drop in. Anyway, I'm starving, so bye.